How's it going, everybody? I'm going to make a video pretty quick about some mistakes I see when people modify the Gen 3 Hemis. A lot of people I've seen on the internet and also in real life, and a lot of people will mod them, whether it be the 5761, 392, or even sometimes Hellcats for that matter, and they get beat by other things that most people would say, how'd you get beat by that? Or, even stock cars. I've seen, stock Mustangs or stock Camaros take, built, modded 392s or just overall more money put into the Hemi versus some other cars that don't have much of anything put into it. So I want to address that really quick. So this is just a few mistakes I see people doing. Now, granted, I'm not the fastest person in the world. However, though, I'm definitely pretty quick for what my car is. It's a 2008, so I mean, it's definitely pretty decent. And I feel that a lot of people that get into the Gen 3 Hemi just kind of go, okay, I'm just going to do bolt ons, cam, and heads, and we're good to go. Well, it's not necessarily like that. So, one of the biggest mistakes I see people doing, not in the engine bay, this crap right here. I know you can't really see it. Hold on, let me get a light. One of the biggest mistakes is not in the engine bay, it's right here. It's the rear tires. So, whenever you modify or even keep it stock, put some like sticky tires on and you will have a far better chance at winning races. I will probably make a video on some of the tires I've used and my experience with that. But so far, put some wide, pretty sticky tires on. So that'll be your first thing to do. Now, other mistake I see people doing. Let me get set up real quick. This right here, catch can. A lot of people think it's a gimmick, or they think it's engine bling, or whatever. I don't know. It's trendy or whatever, but no, these actually do serve a purpose in performance. They help keep blow by out of the engine, and also on the Hemis, even though they're multi-port, it doesn't matter. I guarantee you take off your intake and you look inside, even your throttle body and your intake manifold. Hell, even the heads. There's just if you don't have one of these, they're going to be oil coated everywhere. And yeah, that's people were like, oh well, that's just for safety of the engine. Well, that's part of it, but also you realize that that gets sucked in and mixed with your gas, so it kind of makes the octane not as good. So that's why catch can is important on these cars. Maybe not every car, but on these cars, it's like indefinite. You need it. Don't even try to argue with me with about it. And I see a lot of people running without them. Now, there's some people that buy them and they do it because it's trendy or whatever. But the point is that you need one, or you need some sort of system to where the blow by does not go back into your engine without harming the engine. That is. Next mistake I see is the intake. Now you'll see here I have the stock intake. That's because there's only a handful of intakes that are actually decent on these cars. For instance, I have a 6.1, so this is the stock 6.1 intake, and it's actually really freaking good because it draws air from down here. You can't see it, but there's a hole there, and that gets air from here, and I have a duct here. Can't really see that. Hold on. Okay, so you get air in here, and in my case, it has a duct because it's the Charger SRT, so it blasts air right up in there since I don't have the brake ducts anymore, and voila. So it pretty much is like a ram air. Now, a lot of people go and they get. I cringe when I see people buying like the K&N or the Air Raid. I'm like, cool, it looks cool, but if you're trying to get power, it's not really worth it. The only thing I would say, there's only two intakes I've seen that actually are somewhat worth the money, and that is the True Cold Air by Legmaker and the Cold Air Inductions. Um, the Cold Air Inductions, though, it only works for 5.7s and 6.1s. If you have a 392 or a Hellcat, don't even bother with an intake. If you have a 392, just do the Hellcat lower box and a drop in K&N, or I use green. Honestly, I'm more of a fan of green. And voila, you got the same power and you spent a fraction of the price. So don't get caught up on cold air intakes. They're not worth the hype on these newer cars. There's some that are okay, but I mean, if all you care about is looks, great. But if you care about actual performance, do your research and try and find something that actually works. And the last thing I will talk about is not really too big of a deal to some people, but it would be tuning. And by tuning, I mean actually logging your car and seeing what it's doing. I mean, you might think, oh, well, that's, if you do email tunes, oh, well, my tuner sees that, or on the dyno, I see that. Well, that's not always the case because sometimes, and I've seen it on my car, uh, you could have, timing being pulled, or you could have a vacuum in the manifold when you're watt, and you're like, yeah, that's not really supposed to be there. And people don't really realize that, they think, oh, bolt-ons, cam heads, perfect. Well, that's not really how it works in these modern cars. You've got knock sensors, you've got crank position sensors, you got cam position sensors, you got all sorts of crap. And the Hemis, they don't take much timing just because that's the way they are. So you don't really need a whole lot. However, though, the important thing is that you log your car and you see what it's doing because it could be pulling timing and you could be losing power and you don't know why. So, and that also could be from this guy. This guy not causing it, but this guy saving you from it because it's, the octane gas you're getting is it going to be what that is because it's getting mixed in with the other crap. But if you have this, then that catches a good amount of the blow by. Now, on my car, it just has so much blow by, I had to go this route, which is the breather filters. Not every car has to do this, but because I monitor my car and I log it, and this is why I bring this up, you have to know or you have to see what it's doing. And in the case of my car, it's just pulling so much blow by. I had no choice. Otherwise, I would get a lot of timing pulled, and that results in less power. So, do you have to do this? Not necessarily, but for my particular scenario, I had to. But my points still stand. Just make sure you do the proper research on your stuff and don't just go and throw all the, big power adders in the world without making sure that the car runs well. It's not like knocking or some crap. It's up to date on oil changes. It's maintained. That stuff goes a long way.